We'll uncover the special and even secret places associated with the world's most revered icons. And it leads us to what is without doubt the world's most famous pedestrian crossing. Tonight I'm going to take you into one of London's many dark and shadowy alleyways, one that isn't even on the map. Welcome to the Pocket Tour Guide to Dickens, London. Tonight, I'm going to take you into one of London's many dark and shadowy alleyways, but one so secret it isn't even on the map. And we are really in for a treat because we're going to show you the exact spot where Charles Dickens located the workplace of perhaps his most famous character of all, and even show you an eatery that has changed very little since the days when Charles Dickens knew it. But our journey begins here, outside exit 4 of Bank Underground Station, which is on the Central and the Northern lines. From this exit, we're going to forge right and walk along Cornhill to turn right into Ball Court. We pass the magnificent building here, the Royal Exchange. It goes back to the 1560s when it was founded by the father of modern banking, Sir Thomas Gresham. We're going on a walk into the financial heart of the City of London. But the heart of financial London could be said to be the heart of Dickens' London, because it's really difficult for us today to imagine what it must have been like around here in Dickens' day. The point about this area today, of course, is it's a working district. Hundreds of thousands of people a day come into London, but hundreds of thousands of people a day go out of London in the evening. But in Dickens' day, of course, it was totally different. The railways hadn't come in Dickens' early working life, and as a consequence of that, people had to live close by where they worked. And this area would have been alive all hours of the day and night. These alleyways, these courtyards, even these side streets, people would have lived in these places, bankers and their families, stockbrokers and their families. And of course, these were the middle class that were really forging ahead and creating the British Empire. And these were the very people who would read Charles Dickens' works. These were the very people who would turn Charles Dickens into the world's first superstar. But of course, a superstar needs material, and this entire area around here fueled Dickens' imagination and gave him sufficient material that he could write so many novels, create so many characters, and create so many wonderful storylines. And what we're going to do now is we're going to cross over Cornhill, because just over there is Ball Court, and Ball Court is going to be our gateway to a bygone age, because once we've crossed Cornhill and stepped into it, we really have stepped back into the London of Charles Dickens. So let's make our way across the road. Traffic, but any moment now this is going to disappear, because just feel the atmosphere as you turn into this courtyard, and just look at this. Tucked down here is this tiny little bit of old London. This is Simpson's Tavern, or Simpson's in the City, and they've been expanding the girths of city gentlemen for over 100 years. And as you go through these courtyards, it doesn't take a great leap of the imagination to picture you've been taken back in time 100 and more years. You can imagine it's a cold winter's night, and Londoners are trying to keep warm, and they're piling coal into their fireplaces, and the coal's burning, and the smoke from hundreds of thousands of chimneys is pumping up into the atmosphere, where it hangs over the city in a continuous yellow dome. Often it sinks and rolls through the thoroughfares and courtyards, creating pea soup, London particular fogs or smogs for which this city was once so famed. But even if there wasn't a fog or a smog about, the grit from the smoke was left hanging in the air, and you'd feel it brushing past your face as you walked, as though you were passing through some form of continuous ethereal veil. As Oscar Wilde more succinctly put it, the nice thing about living in London is you can see the air that you're breathing. Imagine for a moment then, it's Christmas Eve, and the snow is beginning to fall, and the gas lamps are struggling to illuminate the neighbourhood. The residents of these buildings are coming out of doors, coughing and wheezing, walking up and down, stamping their feet on the paving stones, rubbing their hands together to keep warm as their breath comes silver on the early evening air. And from that, it's not a great leap of the imagination to realise as you come out into this courtyard, you've arrived at the exact spot where Charles Dickens began that most ghostly of ghostly tales, A Christmas Carol. For this is the site of Ebenezer Scrooge's counting house in A Christmas Carol. And you might recall at the end of Stave 1, Bob Cratchit is so overjoyed when he's released from employment on Christmas Eve, he runs from the counting house onto Cornhill, the main road we came up earlier. And to quote Charles Dickens, Bob Cratchit went down a slide on Cornhill 20 and more times to honour the fact it was Christmas Eve. Dickens used these alleyways for a lot of locations, but most famously it was at a place just through here that he had one of his great scenes in Pickwick Papers, and it was at a little chop house, a dining house just through here. So let's just have a quick look around here, and yeah, look, still there, the Georgian Vulture.
But you know who he was.
I know who he was, of course. Great Expectations.
That old famous one.
Great Expectations.
I'm South African, what would I know?
That was his local pub. Charles Dickens. He used to eat there.
I know that his local pub. I don't know where he sat, but I am a writer.
Dickens would have actually sat here in this pub. We think it was in the corner by the fire.
This is the Georgian Vulture. It was established in 1600. But Dickens used this as the location where Mr. Pickwick, having been forced from his lodgings when Mrs. Bardell brings the court case of Bardell versus Pickwick against him, Pickwick actually takes up residence at the commodious old alehouse at the heart of the city of London, to boot the Georgian Vulture, to quote Charles Dickens. And looking into this place, it really is almost ghostly. You can just see the wine glasses on the table, the wine stains on the tablecloth, the empty bottle of wine there. It's as though some a great city lunch has gone on, and finally they've decided they'd call it a day with their little fragments of lunch behind, and they've staggered home. And of course Dickens came here as a young man, and it came here whilst he was writing Pickwick Papers. He would have got to know this place whilst he was writing Pickwick Papers, and of course it was Pickwick Papers that set him on the road to literary fame and literary fortune. Dickens' inspiration might have come in here. How many characters would he have conceived inside here? Maybe he sat down there, looked across the room and saw some old mutton chop gentleman enjoying his steak, kidney, oyster pie, or his mutton chop, and he decides that he's going to immortalise him. So if you like, we maybe got some little snapshots of a long ago lunch here in the Georgian Vulture. But there is a bit more to it, because if we actually go up here, we've got the old bust of Charles Dickens, very statesmanlike, looking out across his domain, maybe sort of looking at today's customers and thinking they're not a patch on the customers of his day.
Dickens was a man who was fascinated with people. He was a storyteller. And a lot of the people, all of the characters in his books, would have probably based on stories that he'd heard, probably in this very pub.
But then moving round the corner, you come out of Bengal Court, you turn left into St. Michael's Alley, and here in the alley itself is the main entrance to the Georgian Vulture. Still has the old sign hanging above it. And look at this, this is a real throwback to Dickensian London, because you can just make out the name on here, Georgian Vulture, but also here is the name that Charles Dickens would have known it as, Thomas's Chop House. And just look at that sign, it's been polished day in, day out. And of course the constant cleaning has actually worn out the imprint of the sign. Would Dickens himself perhaps have gazed on that sign? Dickens might have then come out of the chop house, walked along St. Michael's Alley as we're now doing, then turned. Oh look, there's a bit more of it here as well. Does this place never end? Oh look. The city folk still come here to this day, and look, I mean, you can still enjoy a lunch here. You don't have to book, you can just pitch up, you can enjoy a mug of ale, you can enjoy, well, that's scampi and bacon, calves, liver and bacon, grilled sea bass. Of course, you can't get the old mutton chops that Dickens would have enjoyed, or you can't get the, perhaps the great delicacy of steak, kidney and oyster pie.
Do I go in there because of the celebrity value?
No.
You walk past and you think, is it open, is it not? Okay. You see the door, and there's an atmosphere. It's a pub we drink in very, very nicely.
It still is a little place where you can dine with the past, dine in history. And then just down this bit here, the perfect place to consider the significance of this in the life of Charles Dickens. His great-grandson, Cedric Dickens, he used to do Christmas lunches here, and he would go for walks around the neighbourhood, taking fellow Dickens enthusiasts around the locations that his great-grandfather had made so famous. Really is a little bit of Dickens London, and it's a London that's well worth discovering and exploring, these great old alleyways.